Welcome back to Icons of Influence, the podcast where we dive into the lives of extraordinary individuals who have shaped the world beyond their fields of expertise. I'm Hannah Halley, and today we're shining a spotlight on one of the most influential intellectuals and activists of the last century, Dr. Angela Davis. Her name is synonymous with radical change, justice, and resilience. From her early days as a scholar to becoming a central figure in the Black liberation, feminist, and prison abolition movements, Angela Davis has never stopped challenging the status quo. She's a fearless academic, a freedom fighter, and a revolutionary thinker whose work continues to inspire generations. Today, we'll explore her journey from growing up in the Jim Crow South to becoming an international symbol of resistance, her time on the FBI's most wanted list, and the intellectual legacy she continues to build. So let's dive into the incredible story of Angela Davis. Angela Yvonne Davis was born on January 26, 1944 in Birmingham, Alabama, a city that at the time was one of the most racially segregated and dangerous places for Black Americans. She grew up in a neighborhood called Dynamite Hill, an area frequently targeted by the Ku Klux Klan due to the increasing number of Black families moving in. Bombings were common, and racial violence was an everyday reality. Imagine growing up in a place where your very presence was met with hostility, a place where fighting for basic rights could put your life in danger. This was the world Angela Davis was born into, and it deeply shaped her understanding of racial injustice from a young age. But despite the dangers surrounding her, Davis's home was a place of intellectual curiosity and activism. Her mother, Sally Davis, was a committed educator and a civil rights activist involved with organisations like the NAACP. She made sure her children understood the importance of education and social responsibility. Her father, Frank Davis, ran a service station and was one of the few Black entrepreneurs in their community, instilling in Angela a sense of self-sufficiency and perseverance. Angela was an exceptional student from the beginning. She attended Carrie A. Tuggle School, a progressive school for Black students, before moving on to Parker High School, where she became aware of the growing civil rights movement. But her world expanded dramatically when, at just 15 years old, she earned a scholarship to attend the Elizabeth Irwin High School in New York City. This was a major turning point in her life. Elizabeth Irwin was a private, progressive school known for its leftist political environment. It was here that Davis was first introduced to socialist and communist ideologies, concepts that would later define her activism. She joined an advanced discussion group affiliated with the Communist Party and began reading the works of Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, and Vladimir Lenin. She saw how capitalism and racism were deeply intertwined and began questioning the systems that perpetuated inequality. After graduating high school, Davis continued her academic journey at Brandeis University in Massachusetts. There, she was one of very few Black students on campus, an experience that further shaped her understanding of race and privilege. But what made her time at Brandeis particularly transformative was her introduction to philosophy. She studied under the renowned German philosopher Herbert Marcuse, a key figure in the Frankfurt School of Critical Theory. Marcuse, who had fled Nazi Germany, saw radical thought as a necessary tool for fighting oppression, and he encouraged Davis to apply philosophy to social activism. He famously described her as one of his best students, recognizing early on the depth of her intellectual power. During her undergraduate years, Davis spent time in France, studying abroad at the Sorbonne, further expanding her perspective on global struggles for justice. She later moved to Germany to pursue graduate studies at the University of Frankfurt, immersing herself in European political theory and Marxist philosophy. The time she spent in Europe was eye-opening. She saw firsthand how racism and oppression weren't just American problems, but global ones. The lessons she learned abroad gave her a broader framework for understanding systems of power and how they operated across different societies. By the late 1960s, Davis had returned to the United States, determined to apply her education to real-world struggles. She pursued a PhD at the University of California, San Diego, continuing to study under Marcuse. But her focus had shifted from pure academia to direct activism. She wasn't just interested in studying oppression, she was ready to fight it. By the late 1960s, Angela Davis had transformed from a brilliant academic into a vocal activist, ready to challenge the systems of oppression she had studied for so long. This was an era of tremendous social upheaval in the United States, civil rights protests, anti-Vietnam War demonstrations, and the rise of Black Power movements were all at the forefront of national consciousness. Davis didn't just observe these movements, she actively participated in them, becoming one of the most recognizable figures of the radical left. One of the most significant organizations influencing Davis's activism was the Black Panther Party. Founded in 1966 by Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, the Panthers were known for their militant stance on self-defense, their community programs, and their demand for racial justice. Though Davis was not an official member of the Black Panther Party, she was deeply aligned with their philosophy. She supported their free breakfast programs for children, their healthcare initiatives, and their stance against police brutality. However, her ideological leanings were even more closely tied to another revolutionary group, the Communist Party USA. For Davis, communism provided a structural critique of racial and economic inequality. She saw capitalism as a system that thrived on the oppression of marginalized communities, and she believed socialism offered a path toward true liberation. In 1968, she officially joined the Communist Party USA, a decision that would later bring her into direct conflict with the US government and cost her job as a university professor. At the time, Davis had secured a teaching position at the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, where she was a popular but controversial professor. She taught courses on philosophy, Marxism, and African American history, challenging students to think critically about power, race, and economics. But her radical views, and particularly her membership in the Communist Party, made her a target. Then Governor of California, Ronald Reagan, led efforts to have her fired, claiming that her political affiliations made her unfit to teach. After a lengthy legal battle, she was dismissed from UCLA in 1970. However, this did not silence her, it only amplified her platform. That same year, Davis became embroiled in one of the most infamous legal cases of the era. She was accused of being involved in a violent attempt to free 3 black prisoners, known as the Soledad brothers, who had been accused of killing a prison guard. One of the Soledad brothers, George Jackson, was a leader in the revolutionary movement and a close associate of Davis. During an attempted courtroom escape led by Jackson's younger brother, weapons registered in Davis's name were used, resulting in the deaths of a judge and 3 others. Though Davis was not physically present, she was charged with aiding the plot and went into hiding, landing her on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. For months, Angela Davis was a fugitive, one of the most wanted women in America. Her face was plastered across newspapers, with the government portraying her as a dangerous radical. But while authorities sought her arrest, a massive movement of support was growing worldwide. Free Angela Davis became a rallying cry, with demonstrations erupting across the US, Europe, and Latin America. Even figures like John Lennon and Yoko Ono recorded songs in support of her, and French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre called her imprisonment an attack on political freedom. Davis was eventually captured in New York in October 1970 and placed in solitary confinement for over a year while awaiting trial. But in 1972, after an intense legal battle, she was acquitted of all charges. The jury found no evidence linking her directly to the attack, and she walked free, greeted by a movement that had only grown stronger during her imprisonment. This chapter of her life cemented her status as more than just an activist. She was now a symbol of resistance, political persecution, and the fight for justice. And rather than retreat from public life, Davis emerged from this experience even more determined to challenge the systems of oppression that had sought to silence her. Emerging from her trial in 1972, Angela Davis had become more than just an activist. She was now an icon of global resistance. Her time in prison had only deepened her commitment to fighting systemic oppression, and she quickly shifted her focus to one of the most urgent and complex issues of modern society, the prison industrial complex. Davis understood firsthand how the legal system disproportionately targeted Black and marginalised communities. Her case had been a high-profile example of political persecution, but she knew that for millions of others, particularly Black and brown people in America, the legal system functioned as a mechanism of racial and economic control. And so, she began advocating not just for reforms within the prison system, but for prison abolition itself. The idea of abolishing prisons entirely was, and still is, a radical concept. Many people believe that prisons are necessary to maintain public safety, but Davis argued that the prison system is not about safety. It's about control, exploitation, and racial inequality. She pointed out that the rise of mass incarceration in the US was directly tied to the abolition of slavery, with laws and policies designed to criminalize Black communities. This led to her groundbreaking book, Are Prisons Obsolete?, in which she laid out the argument that rather than fixing the prison system, society should focus on alternatives to incarceration, such as community-based rehabilitation, education, and economic investment in marginalized communities. Davis's work on prison abolition also tied into another key area of her activism, feminism. But not just any feminism, Davis was a leading voice in what we now call intersectional feminism. She argued that mainstream feminism often focused solely on the experiences of white middle-class women, ignoring the ways in which race, class, and sexuality shape oppression. In her book, Women, Race and Class, she explored how Black women, working-class women, and other marginalised groups faced unique struggles that could not be separated from broader issues like capitalism and state violence. She also challenged the idea that feminism should be purely about individual success. While much of mainstream feminism in the 1980s and 1990s focused on breaking glass ceilings and achieving corporate power, Davis emphasised collective liberation, ensuring that all women, especially those at the bottom of society, had access to dignity, rights, and justice. She was deeply critical of how the state weaponized feminism, such as using women's rights as a justification for war in the Middle East, while ignoring the systemic issues affecting women of colour at home. Her intersectional approach to justice extended beyond US borders. Angela Davis saw the struggles of Black Americans as part of a global movement against oppression. She was a strong supporter of the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, working alongside activists like Nelson Mandela and Winnie Mandela. She also spoke out against US imperialism, connecting the struggles of Black and Indigenous people in America to those of Palestinians, Latin Americans, and other oppressed groups around the world. Davis's influence wasn't just limited to academia and activism. She also had an impact on pop culture. From hip-hop artists name-dropping her in songs to her iconic afro becoming a symbol of Black resistance, her image and message resonated far beyond political circles. And while she was admired, she was also feared by those in power. Throughout the decades, the US government continued to monitor her, labeling her a radical threat. But despite this, she never wavered in her beliefs. Her approach to activism was clear. Liberation wasn't just about changing laws, it was about changing minds, systems, and the very way society functioned. And rather than focusing on short-term fixes, Davis dedicated herself to the long-term fight for a world without prisons, without racial capitalism, and without oppression in all its forms. Angela Davis has spent more than 5 decades fighting for justice, but what's truly remarkable is that she has never stopped. Unlike many activists who fade into history after their most high-profile battles, Davis has remained at the forefront of social movements, continuously evolving with the times while staying true to her radical principles. Even in her 70s and 80s, Davis continues to be a leading voice in the fight against systemic oppression. She has remained deeply engaged with the modern abolitionist movement, supporting organisations that work toward defunding police departments, ending mass incarceration, and dismantling systems of state violence. She has also continued to speak out on issues of racial justice, LGBTQ+ rights, Indigenous sovereignty, and economic inequality. Davis has also played a crucial role in educating a new generation of activists. As a professor at the University of California, Santa Cruz, she spent years shaping young minds, introducing students to radical political thought, and challenging them to envision a different kind of world. Through her academic work, she has helped bridge the gap between activism and education, ensuring that the next wave of changemakers are armed with both knowledge and action. And her influence isn't just felt in the classroom, it's seen on the front lines of movements today. The resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement following the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and many others brought Davis's lifelong work into mainstream conversations once again. Protesters held up her books at rallies, her speeches were widely shared online, and her theories on abolition and racial justice became more relevant than ever. Many of the conversations we have today about police brutality, systemic racism, and economic injustice are rooted in the work Davis has been doing for decades. Her impact extends across generations, with artists, activists, and thinkers continuing to draw inspiration from her work. The prison abolition movement, once considered a radical fringe idea, has now become a serious topic of debate. Intersectional feminism, which Davis championed long before it became mainstream, is now central to gender justice discussions, and her belief in global solidarity, that liberation in one place is tied to liberation everywhere, continues to guide social justice movements worldwide. Angela Davis's legacy isn't just about what she has achieved, it's about what she has made possible for others. She has helped shift the Overton window, moving once radical ideas into mainstream discussions. She has proven that persistence matters, that activism is a lifelong journey, and that no struggle is too big to take on. So what's next for Angela Davis? While she has retired from teaching, she remains an active public speaker, a mentor to young activists, and a fierce advocate for radical change. She has never wavered in her belief that a better world is possible, not just in theory, but in practice, and as long as injustice exists, she will continue to challenge it. Angela Davis's story is one of resilience, defiance, and unwavering commitment to justice. From being on the FBI's most wanted list to becoming one of the most respected intellectuals and activists of our time, she has shown the world what it means to fight for change, no matter the cost. Her life reminds us that activism is not a moment, it's a movement. That change doesn't happen overnight, but through consistent action, education, and solidarity. Whether you're on the streets protesting, in the classroom learning, or using your voice in any way you can, Angela Davis's legacy shows that we all have a role to play in shaping a more just world. That wraps up today's episode of Icons of Influence. If you found this conversation inspiring, make sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to dive deeper into Davis's work, check out her books, because trust me, they'll change the way you see the world. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive into the lives of those shaping history.